Dear sisters, what's up, y'all? Um, so I'm kind of perplexed, man. I did a women's conference this weekend, right? They invited dear brother to do a women's conference. It's such an honor. I think I left heartbroken. I left heartbroken because I heard so many stories of sisters that were just broken and sisters that had never recovered, sisters that lacked major confidence. And as I heard their stories, I see why. I see why. And I see a lot of women not being able to recover from these places. Either they try to fall in love again, either you guys try to fall in love again to fix that space, or you try isolationism, which say, okay, I'm just going to be by myself. Or you say, you know what, forget everybody. I'm just going to love my kids. And I think in reality, man, forget people. There has to be a place where you can reclaim your confidence. And I think I'm going to talk about that for a few weeks, or I don't know how long, man, but it really broke my heart to see the confidence of women shattered, and that a lot of the things that a lot of you sisters do, they just become props, you know. Of course, you guys get your hair done, nails done, look beautiful. That's part of what women need. But you also know when that stuff slips over into props. Props are the stuff you put on your life or put under your life to stand you up, even though you know you can't stand alone, right? And we call it beauty, and we may call it this, and we may call it that. But the reality is, how many of the things you've added to your life, they're trying to boost your confidence, right? You added to try to boost your confidence, make you feel better about yourself. The difference is, it's one thing to feel better. It's another thing to be better, right? And I think that in a lot of your attempts to build confidence, you're so worried about validation from somewhere else. And honestly, that validation is not always like from a man. A lot of times that validation is from your mother, that validation from your older sister. That validation came from people early on that if you weren't validated early on in life, you begin to look for that validation later, right? Some of you look for that validation from your father, right? And if you didn't get that validation, then you look to seek it somewhere else. And I think that's where the tunnel starts going deeper and deeper, of trying to seek something that you didn't get earlier. What I'm finding, sisters, is that in order to have that validation, sometimes you got to reach into yourself and be able to speak well of you. Now, I know some of you saying, well, listen, bro, it's hard to find that thing to speak well of me. It is. But that's when it takes more time. You got to sit there and you know what you got to do? Sometimes you got to seek through the ashes of life and find out what's left of you. And don't be afraid of those ashes, sis, because a lot of those things you lost, it was the best loss you ever took, because you wouldn't have found yourself if you didn't lose a lot of the things that you had. Some of those things, the places you felt like you were in love and this was the only man of your dreams, that loss, even though some things around you got burnt, you didn't get burned. A lot of your props got burned. A lot of what you thought you needed got burned. You got to look through what's left. You want to find your miracle? Your miracle is you, but you got to be willing. The miracle is to be brave enough to look through what's left and still find, wow, I'm still here. In fact, the better part of me is still here because I lost the things I thought I needed, right? A lot of stuff you think you needed, it needed to go, right? So a lot of the tragic stuff that happens in your relationship, and it happens in men's too, we don't talk about it. We act like it doesn't hurt. That's why I have the Dear Brother podcast to help men find those hurts, right? But at the same time, sis, you cannot become a robot, right? Because that robotic attitude you have of nothing, no's going to hurt me no more. I'm going to be hard on every man that comes my way. The only person trapped is you. You got to see that, sis. You got to see that the only person trapped is you. And then many times you'll say, you know what? Nobody will ever get in. No one will ever get in here again. The only issue, sis, is that you can't get out. And that's a dangerous place. So I want to talk about validation. I want to talk about what that means. I want to talk about what that means for you and your recovery as my dear sister. I love you, sis. And that's why I want you to see these things, because my goal of starting a Dear Sister podcast was that for a man to give women something looking for nothing in return. I just want you better. And I know you do. So I'm going to push you. Some of these videos, I'm going to challenge you. Some of these videos, I'm going to get on your nerves. But I'm going to tell you, I'm just your brother. And I love you and trying to push you forward. Let's talk about Eve in the scriptures right quick, right? And Eve, I want you to see this because I wrote about this in the Soul of Sarah. Go on Amazon. Make sure you get this book, guys. Go on Amazon today. Get the Soul of Sarah. I wrote this book after I eulogized my mother. Something really, when I was eulogizing my mother, the message was Sarah died. And then when I really start looking at who Sarah was, her real power, it woke up something in me and said, you got to tell women all over the world this revelation about who they really, 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 really are, right? And what they're really, really, really worth. I know there's some things, I'm worth this and worth that. Yes, sis, but I want to tell you why. One of the first things I wrote about in that book right there was Sarah. If some of you don't know who Sarah was Abraham's wife. And in the scriptures, they call Abraham the father of faith, right? And so if you have a father of faith that's going to birth these many nations and things, you also have to have a mother. And I think that's where throughout history, women never really got the credit for what they brought forth. Most things cannot happen. We know, number one, no human being can come into this world without the portal of a woman. But there's also some ideas, some brilliance, some things in your heart that in order to be in this world, they got to come through you. The war. I think the thing that I struggle with is the war between men and women. Why should we have war? If we're different, why should we have war? If you can do what I can't do, why should we battle? It seems like we should connect. But I think we all fight each other. Men fight women and women fight men, and y'all should be this and y'all should be that. Because the truth is we all lack confidence. That's where that mean idea comes from, and men being mean to women and women being mean to men, and y'all all the same and y'all all the same. The thing is that about that argument right there, the sad thing is, while we all looking at each other crazy and being evil, we still getting together and make babies. What do you think that's producing a generation of? Right? So there has to be a place in your life where you recapture your own confidence. You recapture it, right? And self-love is not just the massage. Self-love is not just the hair and the nails. Self-love is being able to re-identify your worth just because you're a woman. We ain't going to get into you specifically yet. We're just going to deal with just the gift of womanhood. The gift of womanhood is that she has the ability, she has two wombs, one in her body, one in her head. Right? One in her lower body, one in her head. And what that means is she has the ability to produce anything once she receives the seed of it. The danger is that can be negative or positive. But ultimately, you have to get your confidence together so you stop receiving things that aren't for you. Sis, let's talk about your confidence. Eve, Adam and Eve. God told Adam, it's not good for you to be alone, right? It's not good for you to be alone. Now I want y'all to peep this. We're talking about God who made everything, God who is everything, God who is in all places at all times, looked at Adam while he was with him and said, it's not good for you to be alone. What God was saying in that moment was, I can't even, as God, I can't even fulfill that space in Adam's life that he needs. I want you to understand your importance just from there. Before we rush on to anything else, I want you to look at that deeply. God himself had a man who was very productive, very well put together. His life was good. He had everything. He seemed to have everything until God looked at him and said, you're alone. And what you need, I can't even fulfill. Let me make a woman for you. So that, look at the importance of that man couldn't even get to his greatest level. As great as he was, he couldn't reach his highest height without you. That's why your enemy, and we saw it just in the book of Genesis too. That's why the enemy wants a woman confused. That's why he wants your mind all over the place. That's why he wants you to be unstable emotionally so that you don't realize your worth. And relationships have helped that. Bad relationships have helped you do that, right? Bad friendships have helped you do that. Negative words from family have helped you do that. But sis, I'm dropping this podcast to help you realize who you were before your pain, who you were before your disappointment, who you were before the first breakup, who you were before the divorce, who you were before the miscarriage. Who are you? That's what we got to discover. That's where you got to get back to. And that comes in embracing yourself and rebuilding your confidence, right? Eve was there with Adam, right? And then she goes and she has this conversation with the serpent. Now understand this, ladies, having emotions is not a sin. Having emotions is not bad. You are made that way. What the enemy wants is for you to be out of control of your emotions, because emotions is a gift if they're under control, or emotions can become chaos when they're out of control. See, your emotions are such a gift that you can heal the people around you. Your children, your emotions, you're allowed to feel, right? You're allowed to feel and you're allowed to get deeply into things that you can feel. That's your emotions. Same thing with your mate, your husband. You're allowed to feel, to be very connected deeply. But there are times where your emotions will play a trick on you and have you out of sorts. See, the same thing that makes you a healer is the same thing that can make you hurt yourself. That's why you have to control the emotions. Don't control your emotions because some man say you're too emotional. Don't hinder your emotions because somebody who can't handle them says they're not good. You got to be able to handle your emotions and balance that thing so you can be the greatest woman you want to be. Right? And so Eve's here and Eve's with this man, right? And she got offered something, right? What Satan offered her was think this way. He didn't make her do anything. He just suggested that she think outside of herself. See, that's where the enemy wants you, sis. He wants you to always be thinking that there's something greater outside of you. Oh, just take this and you'll be better. No, you are already everything you need, sister. Everything in you, right? Everything you need is already in you, waiting for you to recognize it. That's the gift, sis. You don't have to look out here for somebody to validate you. The only reason you do that as a sister is because you're trying to chase something you already have. That's why you got to do more self-investigation than man investigation. You're investigating him to see if he's the guy to date, investigating him to see if he's any good. No, sis, you got to investigate you to see whether these things even belong in your life. Because I guarantee you that a lot of things you bought in your life was because of your lack of self-confidence. You didn't believe in yourself in that moment. You made your worst decisions in the moments you didn't feel like you were worth anything. The problem with a sister is a man can get something out of his life real quick. The problem with you as sisters, my sister, is that you can't just remove stuff from your life because a lot of this stuff has tied itself to your character. There are some things you dealt with in your teenage years, and now you're in your 30s and 40s, and you still battle with it in your mind, and you start to act out what you think you are. You will drive in a direction that you're focused on. If I'm driving my car and I start looking right, eventually I will start drifting in the way I'm looking for. Sis, I want you to drift back to yourself. I don't want to hold this podcast too long. We're almost at 13 minutes, but I'll come back with the second half of this. The difference between validation and self-love. I love you, sis. Don't fear anything. You're worth it. You're worthy. You're worth it all the time. Remember that. Let me close this show out. Sister, always remember, you're worth it to me, but you got to be worth it to you. I love you. See you soon.